Simply Scuba presents the Deco Stop podcast. Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba and welcome to the Deco Stop podcast. I'm Mark, a former dive instructor, and I'm here to talk about scuba diving and stuff. Jumping straight in, the big news this week is new arrivals from Fourth Element. So they've expanded their range of masks, but it also includes snorkels and a pretty cool bag as well, as exciting as you can get about bags. But so going through the new masks, so the first one we have is the Aquanaut. The Aquanaut is a relatively low volume mask. Comes in three different colors. Three different variations, as it were. So you get black, you get white with a kind of cool blue coloring to it. They're both in the clarity, which is just optical grade glass, but you also get black in the contrast, which has those sort of greenish lenses, which is better for sort of greener waters. Basically, if you're diving in fresh water, colder waters, then it helps to filter out some UV rays. You then have the the Navigator Mask. So the Navigator Mask, which is available in black and black. So you get the black clarity and you get black enhance. So enhance is more for bluer waters, so that again helps to filter out UV, but it also HEV radiation. So that's high energy visible light. So the blues basically. So that's quite good for, sort of picking things out in the water. And of course, clarity again is just pure glass. This is more of a traditional dive mask, kind of similar to the Scout in sort of volume when you compare it to the Aquanaut, but yeah, it's just slightly different. I think one of the main differences is that these don't come as standard with those elasticated straps, those sort of bungee straps. They come with a more traditional silicone strap, and I'll upload sort of videos as soon as I can. I've got some samples downstairs. I just haven't actually managed to film and edit them yet. Three different snorkels in the range. So we have the dry snorkel, the splash snorkel, and the float snorkel. The dry is a pretty traditional dry top snorkel. So you have that wave deflector over on the top with a small float that just lifts up as you go under the water, and a purge valve down at the very bottom. So that's going to help prevent any water from getting into that snorkel. Splash is again a fairly traditional wave deflector style snorkel. So you get the deflector at the top that helps to just deflect waves away from the opening, and the purge valve down at the bottom. And then you get the float snorkel, which is a more traditional J style. Nothing overly fancy. The sort of most of it is completely flexible, as you kind of expect with a lot of these, but it actually has a sort of semi but mostly rigid spine down the back that actually has a floating section. So if you do drop it in the water, or if it falls out or whatever, it actually floats, which is a nice little thing. So three new snorkels adding to the Fourth Element range. So these are their first snorkels. We also have the Tidal changing robes. So these are an upgraded version of the Storm. These are a bit thicker. They actually have a sort of fleecy internal lining, and they have a complete front zipper as well. So instead of a poncho that you have to sort of throw over yourself, you have this front zipper that allows you to get in and out of it that much easier. And two different colors. You get a kind of muted orange. It's not quite so in your face, but it's a good stylish color. You got pockets and a hood and everything. So this is really for colder weather. You got that internal fleece as well, which is going to help you dry off in between dives. And because it's got that front zipper, it's just a little bit easier just to throw it on instead of having to kind of climb in the bottom. But this is a lot thicker and heavier than the Storm. We also have the Expedition Drypack, which is a square 60-litre dry bag backpack. At the moment, we've only got it in that kind of electric blue that they have, but there's also an orange version that is coming a little bit later. This is for... It can really be your sort of your main light travel bag. There's a separate section kind of in the middle where you can slot a pair of fins down into it, and then you have a roll top dry bag section. I think you actually have two sections of roll top to just organize your kit, keep all the dry stuff dry and keep all the wet stuff contained. But yeah, 60 liters is a decent sort of size. So if you are sort of going out and about, then yeah, you have a decent sized bag to carry it around in. Moving on to social channel updates on our YouTube channel. So Friday's AskMark, I was talking about long hose primary donate. Someone was asking, why don't you just have, sure you can have the like 2.1 meter hose, but why isn't that your alternate and you just naturally breathe from the short hose like most people are taught how to is there a reason why you don't do it that way round? And the main reason is that if you're donating to someone who's just run out of gas, you're donating the regulator that you are breathing from that's on the long hose, because you know for a fact that that second stage is working properly. So when you hand it to them, you're both pretty confident that that's gonna work. Whereas your alternate, if it's been sitting in a necklace or attached onto a D-ring or something, you don't know 100%. There's a greater chance that it might not work, or it could have something, a piece of seaweed or something could have just got into the mouthpiece. It's unlikely, but it's a non-zero chance. So that's the main reason why we do a long hose primary donate. It's just you know that one's going to work more. There's a greater chance of it working. Someone was asking whether it was actually worth investing in wetsuits nowadays or just getting a dry suit, which kind of, yeah, if you don't mind diving in a dry suit, because they are a little bit more hassle. I do like getting out of my dry suit and I'm pretty much immediately dry after the dive, as opposed to in a wetsuit you have to peel the wetsuit off and then you have to dry yourself off and then you have to get changed. It's a bit more hassle. But yeah, is there, where kind of is that line for people? Personally, I think the thickest wetsuit I tend to use nowadays is a 2.5 mil shorty. Everything else just tends to be, a membrane dry suit. But hey, that's down to the water temperature and all sorts of things. I don't tend to do that like middle range of it's temperate waters. If I'm diving at home in the UK, it's pretty much exclusively in a dry suit, and if I'm diving abroad, it tends to be in the summer months in nice warm water where you barely need a 2.5 mil shorty. But anyway, talking about cold water regulators, what features to look for, and whether sort of this is better than that, as well as in-water fills for cylinders. Someone was saying that they read somewhere that some people are worried about getting cylinders filled up in those water tanks that you see at some dive centers, and they're worried that it can create condensation on the inside of their cylinder, which I don't see how that... I mean, tell a lie, there's one way that I can see condensation or water getting into your cylinders if that's the only variable filling it up in water, and that's if you literally connect the charging whip in the water, because there is going to be a small amount of water between the charging whip and the cylinder valve, and then you pressurize it. Yeah, it's probably going to shoot a bit of water in, depending on which one you charge first, either into the hose or into the cylinder, but eventually it's going to end up into the cylinder, which is why you don't do that. You connect it, you charge it out of the water, and then you submerge it. And otherwise, the water, or sorry, the air, the inlet is a long way away from that tank, and it goes through a series of filters that specifically filter out moisture. So no, I don't think that's an issue. I have heard some people say about the thermal difference, about the colder exterior of the shell of the cylinder compared to the warmer inside, and all this kind of stuff, and that's a little bit over my head, but I was filling up cylinders in water for years, and touch wood, nothing ever went wrong. If anything, it was quite useful to be able to see a leak or an O-ring go before it actually goes. So you'd see those streams of bubbles, and you'd know, oh, I need to do something about that. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's mainly down to sort of protection. Should something go wrong, the water kind of absorbs a lot of that rapid expansion of gases. And I think that's one of the main reasons why in water filling is done at certain dive centres. But that was quite interesting to chat about and sort of expand in my mind. On Saturday, there's a answered Google questions on wetsuits. I quite enjoy sort of writing those. They're quite fun to go down the people also ask questions in Google and sort of see what questions come up. Some of them are very, very interesting, and it's one of the things is like, did a person actually ask that, or is that just AI nowadays trying to work out and sort of ask what it thinks is an intelligent question? The Sunday dive brief is on snorkels and snorkel parts. That's more to do with the latest fourth element snorkels, because they brought out that complete range. Thought that was quite nice to sort of break them down in each of the parts for anyone who's new to snorkeling or scuba diving and they don't know the difference between those three basic snorkels. So yeah, just a quick little dive brief on that. And this Tuesday coming forwards, I've got top tips on diving slates. I was going through the list of diving products on our website simplyscuba.com, and I was like, no, I've done torches, I've done this, I've done that, and it's like, oh, what else? What have I not done? I'm quite happy to do a part 2 video for regulators or whatever, but I just saw slates and was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can think of a few slates, sort of top tips, so that would be quite interesting if you do dive with the slates, or even if you don't, it might be quite interesting to watch. I'll put links to all of those except the Tuesday one, because it's not live yet. There's no point in putting the link in the description, but because it just simply won't work until Tuesday. But yeah, I'll put links to all of those down in the description below, and let's look at news that has caught my eyes this week. So the first big news story that I saw was that the scuba scene liveaboard caught fire in the Red Sea. From what I've read, nobody was hurt. Everybody managed to get off safely. But yeah, they're describing it as a total loss, which isn't that surprising. As soon as a fire sort of catches on a boat. But yeah, everyone was evacuated safely on Zodiacs to safety, and yeah, the 43-meter long vessel is now unusable, and there's various accounts of different people, and I can't sort of verify these yet, but some people were saying that there were no working smoking or fire detectors. Sort of management of the ship has deserted their group whilst they were out there. They tried to force them to sign clauses written in Arabic, which they couldn't understand, that basically said they would not hold the ship responsible for what happened, and refused to return their passports unless they signed this document that they couldn't read. The United States Embassy in Egypt actually solved all of that for them, and the owner of the ship has just disappeared apparently, and management is just kind of like pretty much wiping their hands of it and just like, no, not us, talk to someone else. But truth. Luckily, everyone, yeah, as I said, sort of made it off. But yeah, they were sort of all transferred to a 5-star hotel, and I think they had a decent amount of sort of money to sort of tide them over, get them sort of back to safety and whatnot. But yeah, Struth, fires on board ships are sort of always worrying, but luckily everybody got off safely. One account actually says that they were in their cabin when they heard the bell going. So they got their life jacket from their cabin and they sort of proceeded above deck, where apparently the fire is said to have started in the engine room. And then, whilst they were being evacuated onto the smaller Zodiacs, the crew sort of very, very calmly, very efficiently, sort of getting all of the guests onto the Zodiac safely, and then once all of the passengers were aboard, then they started to organise the second Zodiac so that they could get themselves off. And by this point, the fire was getting pretty intense, and even though the water was pretty rough, they got all of the passengers off safely, and they were all taken to Hurghada, where they were given drinks, and then the Egyptian police and officials arrived, and that's when they were all given those sort of Arabic statements to sign. But of course, everyone sort of protested. Obviously, don't want to sign a document in a language that you don't understand. They were given phones that they could use to call home, make sure everyone knew that they were safe, as well as chargers and all that kind of stuff. And they were given sort of more than enough cash to go and get essentials like clothes and sort of replacement stuff for them to not replace things, but just to live for a few days, a few changes of clothes and stuff. And then they were taken to one of the hotels in Hurghada, so that they could stay sort of all-inclusive to sort of last out their trip. And luckily they sort of had flights home and all that good stuff, and free transport to shopping centres and stuff. But yeah, this is from one account. She says that she's home, safe, well, and would happily go on another liveaboard with the crew. But yeah, it does sort of really sort of remind you that just be aware, pay attention to those safety briefings, and always sort of always be ready to evacuate at a moment's notice. Staying in Egypt, plastic bags are due to be banned for any use by beachgoers in the Mediterranean city of Alexandria, and to be replaced by eco-friendly alternatives. This is all from the Egyptian Ministry of Environment in a statement last Friday. The decision was taken during a first meeting held by officials from the Environmental Affairs Authority in Alexandria as part of the new No Plastic Bags initiative, under the patronage of Minister of Environment Yasmin Fuad, in cooperation with a number of concerned NGOs. They're basically sort of breaking out a timetable to prevent the distribution of free plastic bags, and trying to find some kind of environmentally friendly alternatives, such as paper bags, to try and reduce the amount of plastic that inevitably ends up in their oceans. It launched a national strategy to reduce the usage of those disposable single-use bags, and hopefully this will just expand all over the place. And yeah, it's definitely worked where I'm from. Most people tend to bring their own bags for most shopping. And if you don't have one, there are some available, but most people opt to just literally carry their stuff loose if they can, obviously, as opposed to pay for a cheap plastic bag that, eventually sort of blows away. So, good move going forwards for Alexandria. And to raise money for her local hospital, a brave woman went scuba diving with sharks at Deep Sea World in Queensferry in Edinburgh. So this was all for the 10-year anniversary of the loss of her child. Amanda Bryce has always been afraid of sharks, and everyone knows about it. It's to a point where she's actually afraid to just swim in the ocean just in case. So when it came to the 10-year anniversary of losing her baby son, she wanted to do something about it and help raise some money for the hospital that looked after her and her family during the tragic event. So she went diving in one of the pools that has some sharks swimming around in it for about 25 minutes, and she said that she's still recovering because she really doesn't like sharks. Yeah, she said she didn't realize the weight of all the equipment was going to be so heavy and all that. Yeah, she managed to sort of raise just under £2,000 for the neonatal unit and the counselling service at her local hospital that looked after her. So well done to her for sort of pushing her boundaries and sort of facing her fears, and of course raising money for a good cause. And moving on to my product of the week, which is that Fourth Element Aquanaut Mask. So this is a snazzy little mask. It's really growing on me. This is a relatively low volume mask, so this will be quite good for free diving as well as scuba diving. It's a, I suppose technically it is a framed mask. It does have a frame in it, but the actual mask buckles are attached onto the silicone skirt, which is more of a frameless trait, but that allows that buckle to sort of pivot and hinge and move about quite freely, so you can fold it down completely flat as well. It has those modified teardrop lenses to give you a decent amount of field of view looking up and down. And yeah, you get it in two different lens options. So either with the clarity lenses, which are just good for, they're great all-rounders. They have optical grade glass that helps to reduce all of the impurities out of the glass to allow for better light transmission. Or it comes with the enhanced lenses, the contrast lenses, which are better for greener temperate waters. So if you're diving at the UK, that's the lens that you're looking for. Yeah, it has one thing that I don't think I've seen on any other skirt is it actually has a silver Fourth Element logo, kind of. I don't know how they've done it, but they've put it into the silicone skirt. Usually you see it molded, so it's raised, but this is completely smooth, and they've done it in silver on the black skirt and in a kind of ocean blue on the white skirted mask. And I don't know how they've done it. They've done it very, very well, and it's just one of those little features that you look at and you just go, huh. That's quite cool. Anyway, otherwise, the strap itself is just a traditional strap, the silicone strap, but obviously you can remove it and upgrade it to the that elasticated strap, which is pretty cool. But yeah, good looking mask and very nice finish to it. If you're in the market for a new mask, and you prefer a lower volume mask, then the Fourth Element Aquanaut is quickly rising up my list of very nice masks to recommend. And finally, onto my question of the week, which just allows me to ramble on for 5 or 10 minutes about a hypothetical question to myself, which this week is, do we need wetsuits? And this is inspired by user Tech2Ziasmic, I think their name was, and they basically said that they have a rash vest, and they also have like tech pockets and things, which is what they use to go diving in warm waters, but for everything else, they're looking to invest in a decent tri-laminate dry suit. So would there be need for any other sort of wetsuits, basically? So I don't know, basically, because I have at home, I've got my 5mm wetsuit, which I think was which was my first ever wetsuit, and I don't think I've used that in a fair time. I think the last time was on a rescue course that I taught years and years ago. And otherwise, I have a 2.5mm shorty. I have quite a few different rash vests, obviously board shorts, but also my Fourth Element tech shorts that I use in warmer waters. Otherwise, most of my diving is in just a tri-laminate dry suits. And I don't think there's a huge need for anything else, but I think that's mainly down to the water temperatures. Bless you, Darcy. Sorry, my dog just sneezed. I think it's down to the water temperatures that I dive in, because it seems to be like both ends of the scale. So as I said earlier, it's whether I'm diving in like very warm waters on like a sunny trip abroad, then I don't tend to need that much exposure protection, because the water is just so warm. And everything else that I dive at home, because the water's so cold, I end up in a dry suit. Sometimes, obviously, here in the UK, the water temperature is like 5 mil wetsuit territory, but that doesn't mean that you can't wear your dry suit. I've seen dry suit divers out in the Red Sea in the middle of summer. As long as you have enough exposure protection to keep you warm in the water, then that's all you really need. And because a trilaminate dry suit is relatively lightweight, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not as light as a like 3 mil full length, but hey, it's not ridiculous weight. You're not going to need to pay for an extra baggage or anything just because you're bringing your dry suit along, and you don't need as thick of a dry suit undersuit, because a trilaminate dry suit doesn't actually keep you warm. There's no like thermal capacity in that thin material. It's what you wear underneath that helps to keep you warm. You compare that to a neoprene, sorry, I said that really weird, a neoprene dry suit. And yeah, I used to teach in the summertime in my neoprene dry suit. I just used to have like a polo shirt underneath, because that's all I really needed in those water temperatures, and it was just easier than sort of throwing on a thin undersuit. But for a trilaminate dry suit, you do need a little bit more, even in warmer waters. Would it be easier to just bring a wetsuit? Yeah, arguably. Wetsuits are fairly bulletproof. But for most like recreational diving, yeah, as long as you you have the skills, you're qualified to dive in a dry suit. There are a few benefits to it. It is that second alternative. Buoyancy should your BCD fail for whatever reason. You can adjust for compression at depth, so you do maintain a constant amount of insulation no matter your depth, as opposed to a wetsuit, but that actually gets thinner and less thermal the deeper down you go. Where they do fall down is in that, yes, if it does fail, then yeah, it fails. Whereas if water gets into a wetsuit, it's not really the end of the world. That's why a lot of cave explorers, they'll often bring both and use a specific, either a wetsuit or a dry suit for certain sections. I was watching one seminar by a cave explorer, and they said, okay, through this section we knew that there was going to be like tight quarters and very sharp rocks, so we stowed our dry suits and we wore our like 7 mil semi-dries or something, because if you brush up against it and you rip your wetsuit or your semi-dry, it's not really the end of the world. Whereas if you do that with your dry suit, you're screwed. But would I put off anybody from buying a 3 mil or a 5 mil wetsuit? Probably not. It's all very dependent on your diving, and that's why it can't just be a general, yeah, nah, just everyone learns to dive on a dry suit and that's it, because everyone's different and where people dive is different. And if you're not into dry suit, some territories just don't really do dry suit. They just go down the semi-dry route and that is it. So yeah, it's very personal, and if it works for you, it works for you. It might be different from someone else. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or the best. It's just the best for that person, and that's perfectly fine. For me personally, What would it take to sort of dust off my 5mm? It would probably have to be where weight restrictions really did sort of limit me, because my dry suit just has too many pros versus the cons of the weight, because it has the thigh pockets, it has that adjustable sort of buoyancy, and it has all these additional features that are just more efficient, and just getting out of a dry suit at the end of the dive is so much more satisfying compared to a 5mm, because I mean, I've been diving in the Red Sea in like January, February time, which is kind of 5mm territory. And because the wind is coming through, you're perfectly warm during the dive, but as soon as you unzip that 5mm wetsuit, you suddenly feel this cold wind just kind of blow past you, and it just chills you to the core. Whereas in a dry suit, your hands and your head are hopefully all the things that are wet. So yeah, you just unzip yourself, towel dry your hands and your head, and you're done. So yeah, it would take a lot to get me to sort of go into a 5mm. I can't think of a specific situation where I couldn't use my dry suit, but it just personally, I prefer them. But if you're not into your dry suits, that's perfectly fine. So yeah, I think wetsuits are going to continue. Don't worry. I don't think anyone's proposing that we stop making wetsuits or stop selling wetsuits. But yeah, if you do want to sort of expand your horizons, then it's definitely worth looking into dry suits. It's almost a staple over here in the UK. But yeah, they are very practical, and you can travel them very easily. There used to be, I don't know if they still make it, but there used to be travel specific dry suits, which were just membrane dry suits, but they were made to be as light as possible, and they were incredibly light. And really, that's all you need. You can go sublime to the extreme with sort of fancy things and materials and make it all heavyweight and tough and all that kind of stuff. But if you're not like bumping into stuff, and if you look after it, then yeah, as long as it is just a sealed membrane of a dry suit, that's all it does. Then you just have your undersuit underneath it, which aren't that heavy, especially if you're diving in sort of warmer summer months. Then yeah, they're not ridiculously heavy. You can travel with them, and yeah, you can travel abroad and dive with them in very warm countries. It mainly comes down to how much time you spend on the surface, because underwater you're going to be comfortable. It's on the surface when you get to that sort of boil in a bag state. A lot of dry suits, like my dry suit at the moment, it has a breathable material. Don't ask me how it works. You got water on the outside, you got sweat on the inside, and then correction, it doesn't work underwater, but when you're on the surface, it allows it to be sort of breathable. I really don't understand how it works, but it works. It's quite weird when you go from a more standard tri-laminate dry suit, and then you wear something that is breathable, and you're walking around on the surface, and you're like, I don't feel that need to sort of unzip myself as sort of quickly on a sunny day, because it is just a breathable material. Yeah, I don't really understand how it works, but it's very clever and definitely a nice feature that's worth looking for on a membrane dry suit if you do spend a lot of time on the surface. But yeah, all over the world, I'd be quite happy diving in my dry suit. And that's it for this week. Yeah, I don't think we're getting rid of wetsuits any day soon. They're becoming more and more efficient, and the neoprene itself is becoming more and more environmentally friendly. We got that Ulex wetsuit in like fourth element surface, and the Aquanaut Escape, which is plant based. It's a grown neoprene alternative. A lot of wetsuits nowadays, the nicer ones, they're made from limestone based neoprene, which is environmentally friendly. Yeah, a lot of very clever technology coming out of sort of wetsuits. But personally, I tend to spend most of my time in a dry suit nowadays. Now, if you enjoyed the show, then remember to hit that follow or subscribe or whatever it's called on the platform that you're listening to. Sort of rate us, comment, and do all that good stuff because it helps the algorithm that we will have to bow down to. And obviously head over to our website, simplyscuba.com, where you'll find all of this latest interesting, shiny scuba diving equipment. I'll put links to all of those new Fourth Element bits and bobs down in the description below so you can check them out. Or yeah, if you just head over to simplyscuba.com, we've got a new in tab which just ranks all of the latest scuba gear by newest, so you know what's the most freshest stuff to arrive on the website, and all of the news stories, all that kind of stuff. I'll put links down in the description below. As well as head over to our Instagram, because as soon as something arrives, it's normally the day after, just because of the way that Facebook and Instagram works. I usually post, no, look at this has just arrived. So that's a good place to check out the latest scuba equipment. If you've got any questions, comments, queries, or even corrections to anything that you hear, pop it down in the description below. And if you want me to talk about it on the Friday show, just use the hashtag AskMark in your comment, and I will discuss it on the Friday show. Thank you so very much for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.